It is my honor and pleasure to welcome our dear friend, Dr. Diane White-Clayton, who most people of you know that she is the leader of the choir, the BYTHAX Ensemble. It's called the BYTHAX Ensemble. Yeah. But she's so much more than that. She's a registered minister. She's a professor of music. She's a teacher, and she's a creator of choirs all over the world. She travels all over the world, right? Didn't you go to Sweden or in Denmark recently?
Sweden.
Sweden, yeah. And teaches about gospel choirs, teaches, you know, she's an inspiration. And of course, she's sung for us individually and with her choir at the temple. And we've come to services at Faithful Central. So we welcome you here this evening. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Rabbi Susan, my friend. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to see you. And so we invited you because we wanted to have a frank conversation of what's been going on. And so I'm just going to go right to the point. So 3 weeks after this horrible death of George Floyd and all these demonstrations all over the country and the world, how are you feeling right now? And how is your community feeling?
How am I feeling? What a question. I vacillate. There are moments when I feel devastated. There are moments when I feel depressed. There are moments when I feel very peaceful. There are moments of despair, lots of anger, sorrow, sometimes just disgust. Yeah. Sometimes feeling very, very loved and embraced, and overall hopeful. I think in the midst, even when I'm just feeling devastated, there's a ray of hope, because I do see, as many people have said throughout this, I see a difference in the response. Certainly when it first came out, you know, when the videos first surfaced, like many in my community or many of my friends were like, here we go again. You know, this is not new. We've been down this road so many times, and it's in people's faces more now because there are videos, because on cell phones there are videos, but this has been through over the years, you know, just unbelievably so. And then you think of the hundreds and maybe even thousands of people who this has happened to, and there was no one there to video record, or the phones were confiscated, you know, just any number of things. So how am I feeling? I'm feeling a whole lot of things. And day to day, within one day, it can change. I had to early on kind of back off of the news and off of social media just for sanity's sake. I actually started a prayer, nightly prayer conference call, really for my survival. It was totally selfish. Part of it was because I just needed balance. I needed to be able to talk with God, with community, you know, with friends who are we just want to cry out to God, because we believe that God is still hearing, and God is not dead, and God is still on the throne, still in charge. And that can be angering as well, because you're like, God, what's going on, right? To answer your second question, how's my community feeling? Certainly, you know, we're not monolithic. And many times in situations like this, or just generally, we are often asked to speak on the behalf of our community or represent. Like I went to predominantly white universities for undergrad and grad, and it's not at all uncommon when you're in a class and a topic about Black people comes up, and you know, the professor will say, well, what do you think about this? And the inference is, let's talk about the whole race. But I hear your heart, though, and I hear, especially as somebody who is a leader and someone who has sort of my hands in a lot of different places in terms of ministry, I would say, humbly spoken, and I may miss some sentiments, but some of the sentiments I hear are many of what I just said. Lots of anger, lots of hopefulness, lots of people going, like, really, y'all just seeing this? Oh, now, okay, we don't want your help. It's too late. And then other people say in the other spectrum, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. Look at all of these white people protesting. Listen to the dialogue. And then you have, in terms of the Christian faith, because historically the evangelical church has not been present, or much of the white church has not been present. And the stance has been, from the beginning, it was pro-slavery, it was pro all of the things that bring devastation to my community. So that can be a frustration. That's a clarion call, like, hello, are you guys there? And if we say we believe in God, if we say we believe in Jesus, what does that look like? How are we allowing that to be manifested in how we deal with social issues? So there's a lot. I would almost say, depending on the generation that you're speaking with, sometimes I find responses can be a little bit different from younger people as opposed to older, not always. So it's a myriad of things, but I'd venture to say, I think I've, kind of covered a lot of the bases. Many people are saying, you know what, I'm doing fine, I'm gonna make it, and hey, I'm good. Some are, I will say back to me, because again, I don't want to be presumptuous to speak for everyone. The one part of me that is grateful or adding to the hopefulness is the exposure that's happening, because our world had stopped, right, with COVID-19, and because people were already many people glued to the news every moment. They were in the house, even if they were working, they were home. This arrested people in a way that many of the others did not. And it's almost, I see the protesting, that response of, we're isolated, but as human beings, we're not called to be isolated. We're called to be together, right? And so this was like pulling away and letting go of that rubber band, and then boom, us going, we need each other. This is crazy. This should not happen. Wait a minute. I'm tired of it. And so anyway, it's almost a perfect storm in a strange kind of way. But I'm really, really thankful to God, because I believe this is, I tell people often, we are living in history. This is unprecedented territory for us all.
Thank you so much. So I think one of the things that's happened in the last few weeks is that it's exposed how ignorant white people are about the daily indignities, or the insults, or the cutting away of self-respect that happens to African Americans. I just read in the newspaper yesterday that Walmart is making this big gesture. Who knew that they even did this? That they're going to stop locking up beauty products of Black women, of African American women. In all their stores, they were locked up only for African American women, because they were afraid they would be stolen. Wow. And now they're going to unlock them. Okay. So, I mean, to even think that a woman can't even go and buy some shampoo without asking someone to unlock a case, on every level, it chips away at your humanity. That's right. And so I'm going to ask you a very, I think, controversial question. It's touchy, but how do African Americans view white people? I mean, you say you have hope, but do you think you can depend on white people? Do you think they can understand? And if they don't understand, how can we learn to understand so that we can really empathize and sympathize and be there for you?
I love you, Susan. I like going into the deep end. You said, do I think I can, that we can depend on white people? I chuckled, and I have to explain why. I don't have hope because I'm depending on white people. Let me just first say that just to be blanket. And I know that you're speaking in these broad.
I need to change.
No. I know exactly what you meant. And that's what I mean. No. Yeah. Because, and here's what I mean. First of all, and most of you that know me, I'm very transparent. That I don't have anything to hide. And I don't like to lie. It's not good for your health. But I my hopefulness is in God. I want to be clear, and I'm not trying to sound preachy, but that's just the honest truth.
You are.
My hopefulness is in knowing that God can change people's hearts, whoever it is, whatever the issue is. If it's me as an extremely bitter person and hating white people because of our history, that is real, and I've felt that before, and I've seen God change things in me. If it's a person that is a racist, that's an ex-Klansman, and that person comes to know God and has a total transformation, my hope is in God. Okay, that's number one. Secondly, I'm not ignorant to the point of there are many white people who have been at the helm of doing a lot of social change and really help. We can look at footage of the civil rights movement, and even going back early during slavery years. The Underground Railroad would not have happened if there weren't white families who were helping slaves to escape. So that's not monolithic either, right? In the same vein, I'm not saying that all people of African descent have this this agenda to help forward the purposes and the needs of African American people. That's not the case either. So my hopefulness is this. I believe that God loves us all and that God has a plan for us all. And as God manifests in the earth, then we get to see a move that changes and shifts things. I'm hopeful because, yes, people are changing. I'm hopeful because, just like you said a minute ago, all of this is bringing things to the surface that many people like me have been going like, yeah, right. But it's cool to hear people go like, whoa, wait, that really is the case. And I do have friends that are not at all swayed by that makes them feel no more hopeful because of the history of distrust and the history of the rules changing all the time. However, I am, and I'm not the only one that's hopeful. In terms of what you mentioned, I can't even talk about Walmart and that foolishness. That's ridiculous. As if this announcement is something great. Hey, we're not going to lock your products up anymore. What? So I don't know when I'll go back there. But anyway, that's another story. But let's just talk, just the everyday things, like a Black man walking down the street and a person approaching them who will start clutching their purse, right? Or who will cross the street, or who will keep walking and expect that person move to the side as opposed to them moving. Now, historically, you could not, a Black person could not eye a white person. And if they did not step off the sidewalk, they could be killed. There is just, like it goes on and on. Let's talk today, though. Let's talk going into a store and you're followed by security. I've lost count of how many friends of mine have had that happen. And I mean, all kinds of friends, dressed all kinds of ways in all kinds of stores. None of it matters. It doesn't, and it's not okay if you are a person that looks like me and you got on a hoodie and sunglasses. You should be able to go to a store and do, shop. I remember going into a store in a mall here, and from the moment I crossed the threshold of the store, nobody else was in the store. The guy the look on his face every second, never said, "Can I help you?" And at first I was like, I'm not going to even believe that he's staring at me like that. I'm just going to choose the up road. And so I would just kind of look back and I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not making this up, but I'm going to still. And then after a minute, I said, you know what? I cannot take this. So I was really angry and I didn't want to say anything that would not be productive. So I abruptly left. I left. And it was really crazy because at first I'd never been in that store. And it was just all crazy. I want to say I didn't understand it, but I completely understood it. So I gladly went to another store 3-4 doors down that I just happened to find that happened to be Black owned. And I spent a good little bit of money. And I was on my way out and I thought, I'm just going to leave it. I said, no, I'm not. So I didn't give him the whole thing I wanted to say because I don't really use those words, and all of them I wanted to use. But I did say, you know what? I really don't appreciate the way you looked at me. I said, you see this? I said, I spent some money in another store. I don't know what your history is with the people that look like me, but you need to check yourself because it's really inappropriate. And when someone walks into a store, you need to smile and you need to say, may I help you? And I just walked away. And I mean, but it's, you know, it's just one of many things. I have a pastor friend who was just leaving church. You know, the police pulled him over and put your hands up, put your hands up. Now he already knows the rules, because if you don't already know this, look it up. I won't go into it. But most Black men get the talk from their parents. And that talk is what to do when police pull you over. It's the talk. One person was just saying, yeah, he had that talk before he had the sex talk. This is how you respond when a police comes. So he already knew. So his hands were on the steering wheel. They were not moving. You have to sit there and you have to be still. And yet in the same vein, the police was hollering at him. He was saying, you know, put your hands up, put your hands up. And so he knows his rights. He knows the Fourth Amendment. And he said, you've not said why you've stopped me. And so the police is still screaming at him. His partner by this time is coming on the second side, on the passenger side. And he wanted him to put his hands up to the ceiling. He said, I'm not going to do that because that is a posture of me looking like I'm under arrest and I've done something and you still have not said what. So anyway, this goes on. And then eventually, and I don't have time to tell the whole story, the police apologizes because what happened is he was close to the church. And so some of his members are going like, Pastor, are you okay? Are you okay? And they're coming out and coming out. And then finally they're going like, who are you? And he tells him, I'm Dr. such and such and such, and I'm a professor here, and da da da. Now he's a young African-American male, so he fit whatever the stereotype was in this police's mind. By the end, they apologized profusely and all that, but you know, it wasn't without trauma.
Yeah. Same
young man, another day he was riding with his cousin who had on scrubs. He was taking his cousin to work, who's a nurse. They got pulled over, both of them, they're like, you match the description of, he's like, my cousin has on scrubs. Who robs a place with scrubs? I'm just saying. It's the norm. It's my pastor, Bishop Omer, talks about a really store, a very expensive store that he's gone in many times, had on a cap. He often wears a baseball cap, racially profiled. You know, it's sad. It's sad, it's pathetic, and it's traumatizing.
Very.
Very traumatizing, and it causes emotional duress, which then translate into physical issues and health. The health of African Americans, people often look at the disparities with the healthcare, and that is true. But many times when we look at illnesses of hypertension, of stroke, of diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we base that on eating habits. That's not necessarily so. Research is
sleep, stress, all of that can exacerbate all of those illnesses.
Yeah, it's terrible. So yeah, it's real. It's real, and that's a part of, you know, one of many things that needs to change.
And just what can we do? How can we learn?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, there are lots of things, because I'm getting this question a lot, because as you said, you know, I've been here many times to Wilshire Boulevard Temple, who I love, been to many other Jewish temples, and I've also spoken and performed and done workshops and all kinds of things at a lot of white churches as well. So much of the white community that I've connected with, people are asking like, hey, what can we do? So I would say first, what you're doing right now, okay? We talk, we dialogue, and we understand that everybody is different. And even though there are some things that you might find across the board, that some of the sentiments, let's say, that I've expressed this evening are, you might find that amongst many other African Americans, being respectful enough to know that that's not everybody's story. So let's say, for example, a person watching this might say, well, you know, I don't have any problems, but because I have Black friends. Well, first of all, just major announcement, right? Having a Black friend does not exempt you from being racially biased. Yeah. Even being a racist, no more than a man who's married to a woman can say, I'm not sexist, right? I mean, goodness, how many, well, okay. Anyway,
different topic.
But you know, you get my point. Is that there is intrinsic in our culture, in American culture, are racial biases that influence everyone. And so the place to start is, okay, where is my bias, right? So before we even start there, I'd say even simultaneously, let's just open up the dialogue. I have a group, you mentioned my group BYTHAX. We did a conference at a church in Ventura Vineyard, love them. And it was a concert on race, and it was very, very impactful and quite interesting. Very proud of them. They did a lot of the hard questions. But what I wanted to mention is after that conference, because it was so intense, especially for the African Americans, because we were pretty much the only Black people that were there. Then that's okay, but that just is what it is. When we got home, we kind of came back to LA, I had a session where we all talked about it. And it was amazing to me to hear people who said, one, I've actually never been in the home of a white family. So I was shocked to even, you know, feel the warmth and love, and they were sitting down with me and just talking, or the stereotypes that they were talking about that they had because of their own experiences. So when we sit down and say, and when I say we, I would say to my white friends that have African-American friends in their lives, when you sit down and say, first of all, one of my white friends did this, said, you know what? I realize there's a lot of stuff that I'm ignorant about.
Yeah.
I just want to learn. I absolutely know you do not, he actually emailed me. You don't have to answer this. If you totally ignore it and say, I don't want to talk, I'm good with that. But if you're okay with it, would you just kind of sit down with me sort of on Zoom face to face? And that was really productive. You know, he learned a lot. He said, let me just hear your story. Then the other side, in terms of getting in touch with our biases, there are so many, social scientists have been doing this work for some decades. And I was doing a little bit of research anticipating this. And so I'm gonna actually, maybe in the outro, we'll put a few links up to
Would be great.
give some suggestions.
That'd be amazing.
There are organizations, there are nonprofits that will come into your business, come into your temple and hold workshops. Because here's the thing that really would help. It's not fun to acknowledge that you have racial biases, but what the studies show is that when they've done tests, people will agree, yes, it's wrong to be racially biased. However, when they do go through the workshop, they see all of these ways that the person is. So it's hard to admit it because people think racially biased and extreme racists are the same thing, and it's not. Of course, one is a little bit better than others, maybe, but here's the problem. Let's say you're somebody who's over hiring. If we have prejudice, any kind of prejudice, what studies will show is if you have a prejudice about a group of people, even if you think it is wrong to have that prejudice when it's at a subconscious level, when you encounter somebody of that ethnic group, you're going to treat them differently. And that difference might be anything from eye contact, kind of like, or going, and you don't even know it, again, or just making assumptions. If you see, like I've heard people say, well, you know, they're different. Like if they're talking about a certain Black person, well, they're different, or you're different. You know, what are you saying, right? Yeah. Okay, I mean, so different means different than your stereotype. But it's just because I'm the only Black person maybe that you know that has a doctorate. But do you know there's thousands of us? I mean, right? They're like millions, right? And in the same vein, why does that put me in a different class because I do have a doctorate? So if I worked at McDonald's, does that mean I'm ignorant or lazy? What? No, right? So it's just all of these things. So we start by educating ourselves. There are gazillions of books that are out. We need to learn more about our history. When I say out, I'm talking about America. I'm not talking about the distorted history that some people, depending on what your age is, well, no, I can't even say that even now in school. Depending on where your sources are, there are books that really give an skewed view of what the history of this country is. Read some Black authors, just do the research, it's out there. And we want to do the work, we want to come to the table. And no, you know what, you guys, we didn't get here yesterday and we won't leave tomorrow. So it's a process, but it's worth it, because when any group is oppressed, then all are oppressed. So it's not just Black people suffering, even though many African Americans are suffering terribly economically, socially, physically, on and on and on, right? Legally, in the legal system, the judicial system, we don't even go there, with the prisons being filled because of a season of saying, let's just make a different law on a drug that is in the Black community, and 3 strikes, they're out. Okay, let's get rid of them, right? That was a result after the race schools were illegal. So I'm going on and on and on, but I hope I answered it all.
I do think that what you brought up earlier, that there's something that feels different about this time, and I think it's the fact that we're all in our homes. Social media is exploding. People are reading, and for the first time, have a moment to actually sit there and reflect what the history of this country is and what their own role in systemic racism is. And we're not talking about the prison systems, that's a different conversation, but just the system of the United States, and how even without knowing it, that we have been ingrained to think a certain way, that we have certain biases. But this time does feel different because people are taking the time to actually educate themselves, and they have the time to think and reflect. And next step is to engage in what you said are those very messy and hard conversations. But that's the only way we're going to get somewhere, is just by greeting it right where it is and calling out the elephant in the room. And I think that is what feels different about this time. So I at least have hope. I hope that other people have hope, that because of this weird quarantine that we're in, this weird confluence of events, of world events, that we can actually hopefully move forward. It's not going to be tomorrow, and it's probably not going to be the next day, but that we can move forward one conversation, one education at a time.
Yes, yes. And absolutely, I appreciate that. And you're so right. I agree 100% with what you're saying. And knowing that, legislation, I mean, just looking at laws and looking at, as there's a lot of reform happening with policing, let me just say. And I have to interject, because I have had so many, I'm related to people on the police force in different places, and no one, well, I am not, I would never say that all police are bad, right? Yeah. And certainly the issue is there is a standard that needs to be set.
Yeah.
That we, know, here's what policing should look like. Yeah. Here's what racial bias looks like. We've got to have racial bias training. And, as you become a police officer, right? 100%. Yes, and then protect the police who want to tell. So with every crooked police, there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 people that know they are that way, but there's this system that doesn't help the police be policed. Yep. So I appreciate it, and let's make sure that we know those who we're voting for. Let's hold them accountable, right? That's the system we're in. I mean, this democracy. We know that we say one thing on paper as a nation, and we do something else. And I need to say one more thing, because I get this a lot too. I hear this from my Black friends who are like, "Ooh, if I hear this one more time, I'm just going, And then I hear it sometimes from white people of the whole label of Black Lives Matter. I'm like, well, I don't understand. Why would you say Black Lives Matter? Because all lives matter. Well, here's the thing. Language means a lot, right? We've heard this thing in our nation that says all men are created equal. We know when that was written, it wasn't saying that, right? Women weren't created equal in the context. And Blacks at that time were not even men, considered humans. So we have to say certain things because we have to negate other things. So yes, of course, all lives matter, but obviously when we look at our country and the way people are treated, that is not the case. So we've got to say, wait. Black lives do matter. It's like telling somebody, eat your food. You're like, yeah, I did eat. I ate some potato chips. I ate some pizza. No, eat your vegetables. Why would a mama have to say, eat your vegetables? Because that kid is saying, oh, well, no, I'm eating this here. No, because vegetables were intentionally excluded. I mean, that's, a very weak analogy. But my point is, yes, Black lives matter because we've got to put it up here to say, oh, wait, sorry. This is a life. This is a human being. This is not a kid in a hoodie that might be robbing something. So let me just shoot him and nobody will care. What?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. It's almost like they're really saying Black lives also matter. I know your life matters, but our lives matter too. And everyone should be aware of that. And by saying it, we know that when you say something out loud and you write it down, and you read it, it's not the same as reading it. When you say it out loud, you write it down, it imprints on you and it impresses you and it goes into your brain. So I don't think we can hear that enough.
It's like the Torah, it's like the creation story, that once we say it, then it happens.
Wow.
That once we say it and acknowledge it, it happens.
Powerful. Wow.
So I want to thank you so much for this conversation, for sharing your heart with us and uplifting us and shining your light on us. And I look forward to more conversations and music and programs and sharing and eating and singing together in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And you know what? I want to say, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I think this is really important. You talked about this last week when Bishop Ulmer was talking with Rabbi Leader, how we meaning Faithful Central, the church where I'm a member, and Wilshire Boulevard have had connections where we've done things together. I had some conversations intentionally in anticipation of coming to be with you tonight to talk with some of my members, church members and choir members who have come to Wilshire Boulevard. And they just talked about, and I, again, real talk, right? I said, you know what, just talk to me. How has it been? Because maybe you've had experiences and you haven't shared with me when we've encountered, when we've come over there. And person after person said, you know what, it's been so wonderful. It's been like one person, the only thing she said is, I know some people wanted to say something, but they weren't coming over to me. I think they were scared or whatever. And I just want to say, just come on and talk. But most are just saying they just appreciated the open arms. They appreciated when we've had scripture studies together, right? So one of my choir members said, I still to this day, I mean, I've gone into the home many times of my friends and they've adopted me and I connect with them and we're learning from each other. They appreciate the cultural exchange and learning about Jewish culture. And so again, that didn't happen just like, let's just do it and now we're all together. It was a process, right? And so coming there, you guys coming to Faithful Central, and even then it was just like, whoa, what's going on? But it just takes, we've got to get in there and be uncomfortable and decide that everybody, you can never say all one group is anything, period, right? And so it's ridiculous. So let's look for that place of humanity, that commonality. And if I want to challenge anyone who's listening, because we all know that people are still like this. There are people who are listening who they don't have any Black people that they are connected with. They're afraid would be afraid to come to Faithful Central and a predominantly African-American church, for those of you who don't know. And it's a couple thousand of us, so it's a whole bunch. They might be feeling, it might be a Black person who says, I don't have any white friends, or my only encounter with white people has been really terrible. So I'm just staying away. I don't deal with them. I challenge those persons to say, you know what, let's decide first to believe what is outside of that reality for you. To say, no, people exist in every package that are kind and wonderful and loving, not flawless. And people exist in every package that are hateful and very evil. Choose to find someone, just one person, to just start a dialogue with, who's different than you. Maybe it's somebody of the same ethnicity, but they just live in a different part of town, or they're, you know, at a different economic level or different faith or whatever, just to just understand we can still agree to disagree about some things, right? But let's just decide we want to honor life because it's sacred and we need to live. We want to live. We just need to live. Black people just want to live. We want to live and have peace. We want to be able to get in our cars, go to the store. We want to have a friend whose husband late at night was on the way to just get their baby some formula. He was pulled over and ended up on the ground. Never done a crime. Had baby formula in the car. You know, can we just, you know what I mean? We want to breathe. We want to breathe and we want to.
Thank you so much. I can't add anything to that, so I'm going to leave it with that. I send you love and blessings.